What was the act that allowed the Constitution to take effect on March 4th, 1789?
Well, the Constitution had been written. You know, we had the Declaration of Independence in 1776, lived under the Articles of Confederation, but then there was a Constitutional Convention. Actually, it wasn't a Constitutional Convention. There was a convening to further refine the Articles of Confederation, but they took it upon themselves to rewrite the whole document and produce a constitution. That was not what they were mandated to do. And it was not well received by the people. There was great resistance among the people of that time to agreeing to the Constitution, and that's how the first 10 amendments, called the Bill of Rights, came into being. Those were written and attached as a reassurance to people who were reluctant to embrace any of it, that it would be okay. So there was an agenda there very clearly. They acted without mandate, against the will of the people, and then worked very hard to sell it when the people wouldn't buy it.
Because they had just experienced the tyranny of the British Empire.
They remembered.
They were pretty up to speed and privy on those sorts of actions. So specifically, what happened on that day, though? March 4th. What physical act?
Well, that was the date. So the same people that acted on their own agenda without a mandate and then sold their work with a Bill of Rights, they decided 6 months in advance that the day that the document that they produced would take effect would be March 4, 1789.
Mm-hmm. Wasn't that the day that the first Senate convened?
Well, that's part of it. Yeah, that the convening of the Senate was the enactment of the document, because the Senate was provided for.
So the physical act of bringing together those quote-unquote elected politicians.
Right. And the tradition carried through all the way to 1933. The first president was the only exception. George Washington was inaugurated on April 30th. But every president after Washington, up to and including 1933, the presidential inauguration took place on March 4.
Is that right?
Yes. So the government made it important, even if it were not before, just by long tradition. March 4 was established as a turning point in presidential administrations. Constitutional scholars will tell you that the outgoing presidential term ends at noon on March 4, and the newly elected president took office at that time. That was changed by constitutional amendment in 1933 to the present day of January 20th. But from 1789 to 1933, that date of March 4 was the inauguration date.
So why was the date of March 4th chosen specifically on 1789? What birth were they trying to create? What entity?
Well, the document itself says it begins with the preamble, "We the people." It goes on, in order to uh, form a more perfect republic, but it's about a country being born that represents the people. Um, so a chart of uh, noon in Philadelphia on 1789 has Cancer rising, the sign of Cancer, which is ruled by the moon. And the moon in mundane astrology, which is what we're talking about here, the birth chart of a thing like a country is mundane astrology. The mundane astrology rules are that the moon always represents the people.
Mm.
And so we've got a document that begins, "We the people," and a birth chart of that event showing Cancer rising. That the rising degree describes the person or the event,
Okay.
and that degree and that sign, and the planetary ruler of that sign, again, moon ruling Cancer, where the planet is placed shows where the people are with regard to the map that chart represents.
Interesting.
And where the people are this is the people bashing part. They're in the 12th house, which is it's the least favorable place that they could have been located in the chart. So to continue with the apparent agenda, the sun in the chart represents the executive, or in this case, the president, and that is at the place of maximum strength. It's in the 10th house, very close to what's called the midheaven, which is the strongest place for the sun to be. And it's in a 90-degree relationship. That's a square aspect to the moon. So we've got set up there what Dave Ralph called executive friendly, sun at its best place, people bashing, moon at its worst place, and a line of conflict connecting the two. So it's as if somebody, in choosing that date of March 4th, chose to symbolically disadvantage the people and give the government maximum possible power over those people.
So this was a calculated decision to...
It appears to be so. When you take into consideration the fact that the founders, in many cases, were Freemasons,
Mm-hmm.
and that astrology is a tool of Freemasonry,
Mm-hmm.
it's too much for me to believe that this March 4, 1789 chart was an accident.
Wow.
And the beginning question was, that's a quirky date. Why did they pick that?
Right.
Well, the chart would say it's because to give maximum advantage to the government over the people. Wasn't that demonstrated even in their actions in writing a constitution that they were not sent to write?
Right.
They came up with a complete new document, and that's not what they were sent to do. And having done so, they went into a sales pitch. here you go, here's a Bill of Rights, it'll be okay, sign here.
It's been said that they should have left it at the Declaration of Independence.
Yes, by some very knowing and wise people.
So, jumping ahead, we've established the chart. So the inquiring public would want to know where we stand and what we should look forward to. If you're able to give us an overview of the situation we're in, and most people have a surface level knowledge of the situation we're facing economically and globally, but given your insight into the birth of this country, given that it's clear that this chart is probably right on. Where do you see us going?
I can tell you that using only the tools of Western astrology, which is all that presumably the founding fathers had, it's a very gloomy prospect for the people.
More good news.
But there's always a but.
Okay.
We said astrology is infinite, that you can study one chart all of your life and never get to the bottom of it because there is no end to infinity. There's always a deeper level of understanding. And so the bondage that of the people that was set up in that chart, when you begin to unpack the chart in all of its infinite detail using Vedic astrology techniques from the Far East, specifically India,
right.
You begin to see glimmers of hope. Obviously, the people are very powerful, or there would not have been this concerted attempt to restrain them by putting the symbol of the people at maximum disadvantage in the 12th house. The people are powerful if they can be made to realize their power and claim it. And that shows in the Vedic techniques in a divisional chart called the Navamsha chart, or the D9. That shows the people to be fighters and very resourceful and determined when pushed to resolve problems. And so that's my hope for the country, is that the potentials that are there will be realized and claimed by a sufficient number of people to turn the situation around. So, in evidence of this, I can tell you that I've been reading Edward Bernays, who is arguably the father of modern propaganda. He left several books, and he goes very directly to say that the ruling elite was in great fear of the power of the people after industrialization and the printing press began to empower the people over the monarchy or the elected governments. They realized that they had a great threat, and out of that came propaganda as a means of controlling people who would otherwise have taken down unjust government.